obviously a very important and another precarious question. I've taken a lot of flack for many years that could have been avoided if I'd have been willing to say that I thought Tommy Robinson was a Nazi. And for my limited interaction with him, I don't think he is, I don't think he's a racist, and as I say, you pay a price just for not agreeing to call him the same names everyone calls him. But I don't think you should call people names that you don't think they are, so old-fashioned idea though that is. I think it's a bit tricky because it's an ongoing case. I think having been warned not to harass people who were going into court in one case, I thought it was very unwise of him, to put it no stronger, to be on another courthouse steps. And yes, he is on the video confronting some of the accused. We take in Britain the issue of reporting restrictions, I can tell you as a journalist, very, very seriously. Like, I don't know that there's any country that takes it more seriously. I mean, it's nothing like America. I never write on any ongoing trial because you basically can't. You can report the basics, but I haven't done it myself ever, but I've seen journalists who have trodden accidentally over the reporting restrictions wire, and hell comes your way. Because you could be responsible, it is thought, for the jury absorbing information they shouldn't have had access to, and then you could cause the trial to collapse, and then you have basically that on your conscience as well as the fines on your wallet. So I thought he shouldn't have been doing that. That said, the swiftness of the process against him, the terrible advice, as far as I can see, that he was given by the lawyer he was handed, who told him what turned out to be not the case, which is that if he pleaded guilty, he would get off. I mean, it goes on and on. I think all of this is contested. I don't want to... There's one thing I have no doubt about in this, which is that to some extent, at a quite senior level, Tommy Robinson's always been somebody who people have wanted to get, that he causes trouble. And the truth is, it's also worth remembering, in his EDL days, he did. I mean, like raising large groups of people is something I think is unwise anywhere, because you never know how the group is going to react, and there's a whole set of just unwise things to do. But, he's not, like, he wasn't going to start writing opinion pieces in the Wall Street Journal or something. So, like, I give him some flack. Like, what do you want him to do? It goes back to my question I said earlier. If you didn't go to the right university and have the right CV, are you allowed to care about the future of your country? And I think he's made endless numbers of mistakes and so on. But I also think that there's been this out to get him thing from the start, which I'm just, the footage I saw of him recently looked broken, as far as I could see. I mean, it's very hard. I mean, I've had a couple of friends who've been in very different circumstances, been in solitary confinement, and it's very, very hard. Very, very hard. And I think he, from what I can see, has suffered very badly from that. I don't know how this story ends with him. I think that the outpouring of international concern about it is a good sign in some ways, because it reminds people not to make a scapegoat of him. But he's just been dealt the most terrible set of hands by an establishment who, as I think I mentioned here when I was speaking in 2015, have never treated any radical imam with like a tenth of the dedication that they have poured onto the case of Tommy Robinson. You know, they find that he's got a mortgage anomaly, and you know, and he goes to prison on that, and you know, and I've got to be very careful what I say about it. As I say, it's an ongoing case, but some people have done a real number on him, and I just think it's appalling.
Therefore, and this will be the complaint which is always levelled at you, and it's levelled at you by the Muslim Council of Britain and others. You cannot castigate an entire group of people for the outrageous ideas of some of its members. And I know plenty of Christians who think similarly on the issue of gay rights.
Absolutely, and I acknowledge that. I'm talking about what the crocodiles are closest to the boat at the moment. And let me give another example. The most obvious one is a security concern. Okay, I'm not smearing an entire community by raising this. But last year, when there were 3 attacks, one after the other, in this country, when the attack in Westminster, that was a British-born convert to Islam. The second is of a young man whose parents were given asylum because they were fleeing Gaddafi, and he was a member, the father of a Libyan Islamic fighting group, which was a jihadist group that was falling out with Gaddafi. So we gave him asylum in the 90s. His son, at the age of 22, blows up 22 young girls for going to an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester one night. And a few weeks later, it's a group of people, to my mind, none of whom should have been in this country. One man from Pakistan who claimed asylum in the 90s, another man who came in some years ago who pretended to be from Libya, who was actually from Morocco, was of a different name, different age, lied about everything, stayed here. Then he slashes a load of people's throats while shouting, "This is for Allah," on a Saturday night on London Bridge. This is on my mind, and I think it's on a lot of people's minds. And I resent the accusation that if one says, should, for instance, those attackers... Of course, what always happens after this is there's a bureaucratic political discussion. Theresa May says, you know, we've got to look at what the tech companies can do to sort of, you know... one of the London Bridge attackers was on a Channel 4 documentary a few years ago called My Brother the Jihadist. Okay. So actually, all she needs to do is turn on the telly. This guy was advertising himself. And what we do is this bureaucratic one, and then now we have the weird, morose, don't look back in anger response to these things. And I think, along with a lot of the public, resent this claim that this stuff happens. That this stuff happens, and that we never talk about whether the people should even have been here. What we did wrong in our immigration and asylum and identity policies to mean that they were here. What the stages are that the whole game tilts. And this is an important point to make. In 2015, at the height of the migration crisis, in one night in Paris, 130 people are mown down with Kalashnikovs and blown up at a rock concert in the center of Paris. And the people who did it were French and Belgian born, but they had been going in and out of Europe using the migrant routes because they knew they could do it, and they were training in Syria to do this. Now, this is an interesting one. Angela Merkel, along with Juncker and others, remained quite quiet immediately after the Paris attacks. Why? Because they become aware of something which I am very, very worried about, which is that if we do not talk about this now, the whole thing can flip, and it flips in this way. So far, if you are one of the people in the political mainstream or in the journalistic mainstream who says, let them come, you've only got points to win. It's only you that looks good. What if at some point things like Paris in November 2015 become regular? And the public turn around to the politicians and say, you did this to us. You were so lax with our security, you didn't care about borders, you didn't care who was here, and now our children are dead. Well, what happens then? And that's what the politicians should be thinking about, among other things.
Well, two things. Obviously, Europe's people seem to be taking that approach right now.
Yes.
Totally the vote in Italy was almost exclusively an anti-immigration vote. And then we have those countries in the centre of Europe, which are take a divergent view. Take a divergent view, yes. You know, from Austria, To Czechia, Poland, and Slovakia. take a divergent view, yes. You know, from Austria, Hungary, the Czechia, Poland and Slovakia.